They thought they had me. They used my husband like a shield and smiled like the game was already won. They thought I would fold, sign, walk away, forget. They didn't know who they were pulling into their mess. By the time it was over, I would leave the house with the white fence and say 2 words that opened a new door. Send names. But I'm getting ahead of myself. This is how it started. My name is Amara Hayes. I'm 34, born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland. I'm an Army veteran, 2 tours, intel work. I know how to listen when a room goes quiet. I know how to follow a pattern without being seen. I came back from war wanting small things: a steady job, a simple street, a dog that barks at the mail, Sunday dinner that smells like home. I married Marcus Whitfield. Smart, clean shoes, easy laugh, the kind of man who makes strangers relax. His father, Harold, is a local name. City council, charity photos, handshakes that look good on the evening news. At first, life tried to be normal. Neighbors waved. We grilled on Fridays. I stacked my uniforms in a plastic bin, told myself I didn't need the old habits. But silence has a sound, and one night our house made the wrong kind. It started small. Marcus smiled at his phone more than at me. He came home with a different cologne, a sharper one he never wore before. He said late meetings, last-minute pitches, traffic on I-83. His calendar said one thing, his shoes said another. Dust that didn't match his office, a tiny scuff on the right heel like he'd braked fast, hard. None of it was proof. All of it was noise that wanted me to look away. I didn't yell. I didn't ask who she was. War teaches you a simple rule: don't move until you can see the whole board. So I watched. I timed his runs. I checked the nights when he grabbed drinks with the team and the mornings he left early to beat the rush. I learned his pattern like a song. The first real crack came on a Tuesday. He showered, grabbed the wrong jacket, and left in a hurry. I stripped the bed, pulled the sheets tight, and reached for the extra pillowcases in the nightstand. There, under a folded handkerchief, sat a small, scratched phone. A burner. No email. No apps. Just calls and texts. There was a lock code, but whoever set it didn't care enough to change the default. It opened on the second try. The list of contacts was short. No names. Just initials and numbers. One thread stood out. It wasn't the words that caught me. It was the timing. Messages that hit right when Marcus said he was on the treadmill. Short replies. All muscle, no fat. When? Tonight. Back door. Same car. No pictures? A new text popped in while I held the phone, as if the house itself had answered me. Confirm. 1900. St. Paul. Kitchen. Kitchen. Not a kitchen. The kitchen. A restaurant. I knew the one on St. Paul that let people slip in through the back when they didn't want to be seen. I put the phone back exactly as I found it. I made the bed again, slow, to still my hands. That night, Marcus said he was going to the gym. I kissed his cheek, counted to 60 after the door closed, then took my old sedan, the one with a dent that makes it forgettable, and parked 2 blocks off St. Paul. I didn't dress like a spy. I wore a hoodie and old sneakers and kept my head down like any woman trying to get home. At 1857, a black sedan rolled into the alley behind the restaurant. The driver had a small crown tattoo on his wrist. Marcus came in from the far side, hood up, head down. He didn't see me. He went through the worker's door without knocking. The crown tattoo followed. I took a slow walk around the building, counting cameras, noting blind spots, trying not to look like I was counting anything at all. Inside, plates clinked and people laughed at things that weren't funny. I stood just far enough from the glass to catch reflections. The kitchen door swung open. For 3 seconds, I saw Marcus at the stainless counter with 2 men. One I didn't recognize. The other I did. Even though I had only seen him on TV, Harold Whitfield, my father-in-law, shaking hands with a chef every holiday, cutting ribbons, talking about clean contracts and bright futures. 3 seconds can tell you a lot. Marcus kept his hands tight to his body like he was holding something he shouldn't drop. The man with him, the one I didn't know, kept his eyes on the back door, not the front. He knew where trouble comes from. Harold didn't look nervous at all. He looked bored, like this was routine. I didn't barge in. I didn't pull the fire alarm. I circled back to the alley and waited, counting breaths. At 1922, the back door opened. The crown tattoo walked out first, scanned left and right, nodded. The unknown man followed with a thin folder tucked under his jacket. Marcus came last, shoulders tight, face blank. He climbed into the back seat like he'd practiced it. I let them go. Then I slipped behind the restaurant to the small dumpster near the kitchen door. It was a habit I never wanted to need again. Look where people throw away what they can't keep. The top bag was tied but not tight. Inside, beneath onion skins and a broken plastic ladle, were thin gray snakes of shredded paper. The cut was cheap, not cross-cut. Someone had rushed. I pulled out a handful and stuck it in my pocket. The bag also held a torn corner of a business card, half-soaked but still readable. Lynn Mercer, Detective. There are good ones. There are bought ones. There are the quiet ones who keep the books balanced for people who never dirty their hands. Which kind was this? And why was his card in this trash? I drove home the long way, let the city lights write lines across the windshield. Back in the bedroom, the burner phone still sat where I left it. Another text had come while I was gone. Scene. He's green. Keep her calm. Her. Me. Someone thought they could manage me like a problem on a checklist. I put the phone down and stared at the ceiling, where a thin crack ran from the corner over our bed. It had always been there. I just hadn't noticed how straight it was. War had taught me another lesson. The first time you feel fear, name it. I named mine. Not the other woman. Not even Marcus. My fear was the net. The hands behind the hands. The ones that teach good men bad habits and make them feel safe while they fall. I didn't sleep. At dawn, I took the shredded pieces from my pocket and spread them on the kitchen table. Coffee, scissors, tape. I worked in silence, building lines from scraps, a puzzle of edges and fonts. Most of it was nothing. Headers, signatures, dates. But one strip fell into place like it had been waiting for me. Cole. Consulting. Retainers. City bid. Cole. The name didn't sit right in my mouth. I typed it into my head and let it hang there, heavy. I didn't know yet who he was or what he wanted. I only knew this. Someone thought they could pull me into a clean life, then shove me into the dark and close the door. Someone thought I would choose the quiet. They were wrong. If this was only about cheating, I could have walked. But the burner, the alley, the card, the name, that was not romance. That was business. And business like that doesn't stop at a kiss. So I did the thing I swore I'd never do again. I put the soldier back on. Not the uniform, but the mind. I checked my locks, charged my phone, wrote 3 numbers on a sticky note and hid it under the sink. I sent one text from my own phone to a person who only calls when things are already on fire. Then I stood in the living room and looked at the white fence through the window. People love fences because they look like safety, but a fence is only paint on wood. It doesn't stop a shadow. By breakfast, I had one clear thought. If Marcus had stepped into this by mistake, I could pull him out. If he had stepped in with both feet, I would still pull him out. Of my life. Either way, I was done waiting to be handled. I poured coffee, heard his keys at the door, and said what normal wives say every morning. Hey. He kissed my cheek and tasted like mint. He smiled, and for a second I almost remembered the first day we met. "Busy day?" I asked. "Crazy," he said. "Back to back." I nodded and smiled back, and while I smiled, I counted his blinks, his pauses, the small tap of his left index finger on the counter. 3 beats, a pattern I had never noticed before. I wasn't looking for a confession. I was measuring a clock I would need to stop later. He left. I washed the cup. I went to the bedroom and opened the nightstand. The burner sat in the same place. I turned it on, read the newest message, and felt the hook set in deeper. Confirm. 0100 same doc. Bring him. Bring him. Who? To who? And why use a dock when you have a city full of rooms? They thought they had time. They thought I would panic or plead. They thought this would end the way easy plans end. Clean, quiet, unmarked. They had no idea what kind of war they had just invited into their house. By noon, I had a name to chase, and by night, I wanted a face. If I was wrong, I'd apologize later. If I was right, there wouldn't be time for apologies. I started with the scraps on my table. Coal, consulting, retainers, city bid. I didn't need the whole page. I needed the spine. In Baltimore, money moves on paper first. Bid packets, scope addendums, change orders. I pulled up the city's public procurement site and skimmed through awards from the last 2 years. Trash collection routes, small harbor repairs, lighting upgrades near the waterfront. A handful of winners kept repeating. Shell companies with pretty names and empty websites. Harbor Key Services, Northeast Civic Partners, Bright West Advisory. They shared something more important than branding, mailbox addresses and registered agents that traced back to the same building above, a payday lender on Pratt. Cole didn't appear on any page where he should have, but he leaked through the edges, and R. Cole, listed as a consultant of record on a subaward, a signature that looked like it wanted to be straight, but sagged at the end. My finger followed it down the screen. People think signatures hide a person. They do the opposite. They reveal habit. I called someone who only picks up for old favors. "You still dealing with plates?" I asked. "Once in a while," he said. "Why?" "I need a read on a black sedan," I said, giving him all I had. Make, model, a dent near the taillight, the crown tattoo on the driver's wrist. "King's kid," he said without thinking. "If it's who I think it is." "King?" "Darius King Cole. Don't say I told you," he said, and hung up like I'd touched a hot wire. Now I had more than a name. I had a nickname, people said with a lowered voice. "The way you talk about weather you can't change." The crown tattoo made sense. Crowns mean ownership. The question was, of what? I needed to see Marcus's pattern without touching him. I traced his runs again. Same shoes, same route on the map he posted to a private fitness app, but the timing had shifted. He used to cut through the park. Now he looped a block farther east, which kept him out of sight of a gray building with exterior cams. He didn't know I'd been counting. He didn't know I was counting the new gaps too. At lunch, I sat in a corner booth of a diner that smelled like coffee and bleach and listened to the street. I wasn't the only one listening. People in this city carry everything in their voices. Fear, pride, names. 2 men in work jackets took the booth behind me, the kind of men who talk quiet even when no one's around. "King's boy messed up that drop," one said. "Which one?" "The crown wrist." "They fix it?" "Dock 17, tonight. He's sending Whitfield to keep it pretty." I stared into my coffee like it could answer me. Whitfield. They meant Harold, or they meant Marcus, or maybe both. Keep it pretty is how you talk when the mess is already made. I paid cash and walked out. Slow. Just another woman heading to nowhere special. I ordered a rideshare to the body shop 3 blocks down, canceled it when I saw what I needed. A black sedan with a fresh windshield sticker for King's Auto Glass. No threat hides forever. It needs air and errands like everyone else. The driver came out with his hand wrapped in tape where the crown ink showed. He checked his phone, looked up the street, and for one small second we met eyes. He saw nothing in mine because I put nothing there. He pulled away. Back home, Marcus had left vitamins on the counter and his gym bag slumped by the door, a small storm that said, "In a rush." I made a show of folding the bag open to breathe it out and found what I always find when people get sloppy, something that didn't belong. Beneath a rolled-up t-shirt sat a USB drive inside an empty protein bar wrapper. I didn't touch it with my fingers. I used a napkin, plugged it into my old beater laptop that never touches our Wi-Fi, and waited. Photos. Not many. Careful men don't hoard. A conference room shot taken too fast. A blurry slide with the title, RFP, East Harbor Lighting Phase 2. A printout corner that showed a stamp, Internal City Review. One frame was sharp enough to read a logo I'd already seen online, Northeast Civic Partners. Off to the side of the photo, just a thumb and the edge of a suit. The thumbnail was chewed. Marcus never chewed his nails. I ejected the drive, wiped it, put it back where I found it, and breathed. He wasn't just stepping into a mess, he was carrying parts of it. Maybe to impress a father who treated him like a shiny business card, maybe for money that filled a crack I hadn't seen, maybe for something simpler and uglier. I told myself not to guess motives I couldn't confirm. Guessing gets people killed. The burner pinged in the nightstand like a cricket. I slid the drawer open and read, "Confirm. 2300 rehearsal. 0100 same doc. Bring him." Bring who? The message didn't say. The last time they wrote "bring him," they meant Marcus. Or they meant someone I hadn't met yet. Someone used to being moved like a chess piece. At 6, Marcus came home with grocery bags and too many smiles. He cooked pasta like we were young again. He asked about my day and didn't wait for an answer. When he leaned to kiss me, I smelled a hint of smoke that didn't come from our kitchen. "Dad wants to do dinner Sunday," he said, almost casual. "Just us. It's been a minute." "Sunday works," I said. I didn't look at him when I said it. I looked at the reflection of our window in the microwave door. It cut our faces into rectangles. We ate. We talked about things that didn't matter because we were both hiding the ones that did. After dishes, he went to the garage to organize tools, which meant he needed to be alone. I let him go. People tell you who they are when they think no one's looking. People also tell you who they fear. I texted one person who knew how to keep a secret. Lena, my friend from before the service, now a nurse who has seen more endings than beginnings. "If I say storm," I wrote, "you call the number on the old green card and ask for Dana. If I say clear, you forget I texted. You got me?" "I got you," she wrote. "You good?" "I'm breathing," I wrote back. At 21:30, I drove to the waterfront, 3 blocks past the tourist lights where the air turns colder and honest. Dock 17 was a cut in the dark, a rectangle of water that caught a dull moon. I took the path no one takes, along the fence line where the boards splinter, stepping where I could without sound, pausing long enough to let my eyes earn what they were seeing. Old docks keep the secrets of whoever ran them last. There were scuff marks on the concrete that said pallets, fresh enough to still be chalk white. A burnt stub of a cigar sat in the corner, expensive kind, the cap cut clean. A zip tie lay near a post. A camera above the entry gate had a new housing and an old wire. The wire was cut. Whoever ran this thought about optics, not angles. They wanted a camera to exist, not to see. I mapped my approach for later and my exit for sooner. There was a place where the wind blew in a constant whistle, a blind for sound. There was a patch of shadow that moved with the passing of a single street light half a block away. If I hugged that rhythm, I could cross 20 feet unseen. I checked for motion sensors with a small trick, tossing a pebble and watching how the shadows changed. Nothing moved. Too confident or too lazy. Either one is a weakness. I was turning to leave when a car rolled 2 streets over. Slow, like a thought not yet decided. I slipped behind a stack of old crab pots and watched the headlights smear along a corrugated wall. The engine idled, then cut. A door opened and closed. Footsteps. There's a particular way men walk when they're supposed to be alone, but no, they aren't. He had that walk. The footsteps paused by the gate. A lighter clicked. The smell of the same expensive cigar moved on the wind. He didn't go in. He didn't need to. He was marking place, not time. When the cigar went out, he flicked it toward the water and got back in the car. The car didn't start for 5 long seconds. He was listening too. Then it turned over and left. On my way home, paranoia tried to be my friend. Every pair of headlights behind me looked like a tail, every stoplight an ambush. I ran 3 turns I didn't need to run and took one I did, a slip into a bank lot with 2 exits. No one followed. Or if they did, they were good enough not to get caught. At the house, the porch light across the street flickered 3 times. It does that when the wiring is mad at the rain. It also does that when someone replaces a bulb too cheap for the socket. I forced myself to choose the ordinary answer. The other answers would come soon enough. Inside, Marcus was in the shower. I checked the nightstand. The burner hadn't moved. A new text waited anyway, like a breath on my neck. Stay in your lane. No number, no name. The kind of text that lets a person feel powerful for 10 seconds and then forgets it ever existed. I stared at the words until they blurred, and an old calm settled into my bones. I had lanes. I also had exits. I had a clock. They didn't know it was already ticking. I put the phone back, washed my face, and got into bed before Marcus came out. He slid in beside me and fell asleep too fast. I lay there counting his breaths, then the seconds between car sounds outside, then the slow turn of the ceiling fan blades. Somewhere, a train blew a long, lonely note that made the windows sing. They thought warning me would slow me. They thought I wanted their lane, their rules, their timing. They were sure of it because men like them always are. But the truth is simple. I wasn't after their lane. I was after the road under it. By the time they tried to turn family dinner into a peace treaty, I already had enough to burn their table down. I still needed one thing I couldn't buy, bluff or guess. Proof that a cop stood in their circle and cleaned up their mess. Once I had that, no speech would save them. Morning gave me a quiet house and a loud mind. I laid everything out on the kitchen table, phone logs, torn strips of paper, a map with circles and arrows like a kid's homework. I wrote 3 names in thick ink: Whitfield, Cole, Mercer. If they touch the same money, they touch the same risk. Money makes men brave. Risk makes them stupid. I started with what the scraps had already told me. RFP, East Harbor Lighting Phase 2. If you want to hide a theft, you pour concrete over it and call it an upgrade. I drove to the project site just after the crews broke for lunch, cones stacked, lunch pails open, radios low. A white trailer sat off to the side with a logo I knew now by heart: Northeast Civic Partners. There's a smell to these places: hot metal, damp plywood, the sweet bite of new wiring. I walked the fence like a bored neighbor and watched plates roll by. 3 trucks wore city seals. 1 didn't. It idled too long, like it was waiting for a cue. The driver stared at his hands and never at the work. Habit says a lot. On the corner, a corner store kept a dusty camera dead center over the doorway. I bought a water and asked the owner if he could rewind yesterday, because my cousin thinks he lost his bike here. He rolled his eyes, handed me the remote, and made a call that kept him busy for 5 minutes. That was all I needed. On the screen, 1918, a black sedan nosed into view, the one with the crown tattoo behind the wheel. He didn't park. He paused long enough to hand a flat envelope out the window to a man in a suit who stepped from a dark SUV. Freeze frame, zoom, grain. I couldn't see his face, but I got the build, the haircut, the habit. He touched his shoulder before he took anything, like he wore a holster too often to stop feeling it. Cops do that the way soldiers check door locks in their sleep. I left with nothing in my hands and more in my head. Somewhere between the lighting project and the restaurant kitchen, money changed titles. I needed the link with a badge. I called my old favor again. "Plates?" I said. "You're burning through my kindness, Hayes," he said, but he read them out anyway. 2 belonged to the city fleet, except the database listed them as spares, not assigned to any unit. The dark SUV's plate pinged once in a district yard, once outside a courthouse, and once with a notation I'd never seen. Temporary reassignment, confidential. "Means what?" I asked. "Means someone's borrowing uniforms," he said. "Means don't call me back today." I didn't. I drove to the back of St. Paul and looked at the restaurant in daylight. Kitchens tell the truth better than dining rooms. In the alley, a bent pipe let me see down the length of the prep line when the back door swung. Stainless steel, stacked pans, a radio whispering old soul hits. I caught a reflection, Marcus's profile, lips tight, eyes on the floor. Not the look of a man cheating, the look of a man carrying something that isn't his. Before the door shut, a hand I didn't recognize slipped him a narrow flash drive wrapped in a napkin. The hand had a scar that ran pale across the first knuckle. Details like that keep you alive. I needed ears inside. You don't need spy gear for that. You need tape, an old phone with a voice memo app, and a place no one cleans. I slid the phone under the lip of the alley dumpster, stuck it where grease catches dust. I set it to record and left. If I was lucky, I'd get hiss and rats. If I was luckier, I'd get words. On my way to the car, I spotted a maroon SUV parked half a block up with a cracked Saints sticker in the back window. It had been behind me 2 nights in a row, close enough to be a comfort, far enough to be polite. I kept walking like I didn't see it. I turned the corner and doubled back through a loading dock. When I stepped out again, the SUV had shifted forward just 1 space, like a breath drawn in and held. I smiled for the first time all day. Someone had decided I was worth the gas. Home again, I wiped the kitchen table clean as if I'd been home the whole time. Marcus texted, "Running late, don't wait up." He didn't add a heart. He didn't add anything. The absence was its own message. At 16:00, I went back for the phone. I didn't reach under the dumpster right away. I waited for a kitchen boy to smoke and a line cook to swear at a ruined sauce. When the alley breathed out, I crouched, slid my hand where I'd stuck the tape, and felt nothing. Cold metal. Empty. Someone had found my ears or someone had cleaned the edge for the first time in months. Either way, they'd touched my line. A dishwasher kicked the door and shouldered out a crate of bottles. I stood up like I'd just dropped my keys and laughed at my own clumsiness. He glanced at me, bored, and went back inside. I walked away slow. If they'd pulled the phone, they'd leave a message on it just for me. If they'd missed it, I'd come back a 3rd time when rats were braver than men. I didn't make it home before my car told me a different story. The steering felt a shade heavy. Paranoia offered to drive. I pulled into a car wash, rolled halfway up the brushes, stopped, and popped the hood. Back when I traveled convoys, we checked wheel wells for magnets by feel, alone. My hand found it now. A square, hard edge tucked behind the inner lip. A tracker. New. Not cheap. I worked it loose with the tire iron, wrapped it in a greasy towel, and drove out like nothing had changed. A city bus hissed at the curb. I tucked the tracker onto a rib under its rear bumper with a quick magnetic kiss and watched my new ghost pull away toward a neighborhood I didn't live in. Let them pull circles around an empty stop. Let them waste night on asphalt. I texted Lena one word: storm. She called me in under a minute. I'm here, she said. You want me to make the call? Yeah. Ask for Dana. Say I'll be ready when it breaks. You ready now? She asked. No, I said, but I know how to get there. It got darker before it got simple. Marcus walked in at dusk, early, the way people do when they're afraid of being late to their own alibi. He wrapped his arms around me like a man who wants to feel forgiven without saying why. His heartbeat was fast. He smelled like smoke again, not from our kitchen. Dad called, he said. Sunday at 7. He misses you. Sunday works, I answered, and watched the way his jaw moved when he lied. He couldn't help it. His teeth set a millimeter deeper, like each word had to be bitten in half before he could release it. We ate in front of the TV. A news segment flashed the harbor, smiling faces with shovels, a ribbon cut 2 years ago for phase 1 of the same lighting project. Harold shook hands with a man whose name didn't make the chyron. In the background, the crown tattoo flashed for half a second and was gone. Funny, I said. Your dad's in everything. He likes to help, Marcus said. He flicked channels like the remote owed him money. Ever heard of a Detective Mercer? I asked, casual, like I was testing a smoke alarm. No, he said too fast. Why? PTA mom mentioned him. Her neighbor. I lied, and sipped water so I wouldn't smile. He stood to take our plates to the sink. The movement was nothing. The drop of his shoulders was everything. He'd heard the name too. He'd filed it under "Don't Bring Home." When he slept, I checked the nightstand. The burner was still there, but someone had turned it face down and wiped the screen clean. A new thread sat waiting. Stop fishing. Sunday stays clean. Oil 100 unchanged. Doc 17. Bring him. They had eyes in my house or on my hands. Either they'd watched me pick up the phone, or they knew how a person like me breathes when she's cornered. Bring him. Him who? If they meant Marcus, they wanted me to believe he was leverage. If they meant someone else, they wanted me to spend the whole night guessing. Both were wins for them. I stared at the words until the backlight died. Then I wrote down a new plan, simpler than all the maps and arrows. Walk into the dark first, not last. Choose the angle and force them to play on it. Before dawn, I drove the route to Dock 17 twice. The first run, I looked for what could hide a man. The second, I looked for what could hide me. A rusted ladder down to the water left streaks on my palms, slick with salt, rough with old paint. A corrugated wall shot my shadow crooked when the streetlight cycled, which meant I'd be a ghost every 30 seconds if I moved when the bulb hummed. A warehouse door had a padlock that looked new, but the hasp was old and bent. One good pull, and it would fail. That told me what I needed to know. Appearances over structure. They cared how danger looked, not how it worked. As I climbed back into my car, my phone buzzed. Not the burner. My own. Unknown number. No words, just a photo. A man's wrist on a table, face out of frame. Crown tattoo. Next to his hand, a ring I knew well. Simple gold band with a nick on the inside where it once caught on a locker. Marcus's ring. He never took it off. My chest went cold. Not hot. Cold makes you careful. Heat makes you loud. Another text followed. 5 words I read 3 times to make sure they said what they said. Come alone, or he pays. There it was. The hook they trusted. The timeline they set. The rules they believed I'd follow. They thought they were writing the 3rd act already. They thought Sunday would be a tidy ending with smiles and a toast. They didn't understand what they'd invited. They weren't ready for what happens when you take a soldier's choice away. They told me to come alone, or Marcus would pay. I said nothing to them and started inviting other guests they didn't believe in: light, time, angles, and habit. If they wanted me boxed in, I'd build the box myself and leave a door only I could see. First, I gave fear a job. I wrote the plan in 3 lines on a sticky note and taped it inside the cabinet under the sink where I keep extra sponges. Light. Choose when it dies and where it comes back. Attention. Make them look the wrong way. Leverage. If I go quiet, the city gets loud. Then I made leverage real. I called Lena. "Storm," I said. "I made the call," she answered. "Dana's voice is pure stone," she said. "On my line now." I took the back stairs to our building's small roof and dialed the number Lena had saved for me years ago under a fake pizza place. A woman picked up on the second ring. "Hayes?" "Yes?" "This is Dana," she said. Nothing else. No agency, no title. People who can help don't need costumes. "I'm not asking for a raid," I said. "Not yet. I need a safety net and a clock. If I don't check in by 01:30, you drop everything I've got where it hurts." "Package? On the way," I said. I spent the next hour making a clean copy of every dirty thing I'd gathered: the rebuilt strips from the trash, the screenshots of Northeast Civic Partners, the plate lookups, the photo from the corner store camera with the crown wrist and the man who touched his shoulder like a holster, the USB images from Marcus's protein bar wrapper. I added a short note in simple words: Whitfield, Cole, Mercer. I didn't have to prove a case. I had to prove a pattern. Patterns are what people like Dana are built to see. I uploaded the bundle to a dead drop link she texted me: 2 words, a slash, and numbers that looked random because they were. It took 13 minutes. I watched each minute crawl and reminded myself: slow is stable, stable is fast. When it finished, I got a thumbs up emoji back. Cold. Almost funny. "Check in by 01:30, she wrote, "else it moves." I put my phone on the table face down and adjusted the other side of the plan. Attention. People notice what shouldn't be there more than what is. At a thrift store that smelled like lemon cleaner and old cloth, I bought a tiny battery timer, the kind gardeners use for lights they don't want to forget. I also grabbed a cheap desk fan with a broken front grill and a roll of duct tape. At a hardware store, I paid cash for a headlamp and a pair of knee pads. I wasn't decorating. I was building a rhythm in a place that thought it could keep mine. By dusk, I was back at Dock 17. In a half-collapsed storage row 2 lots down, I found a power box with its faceplate held on by a single rusted screw. It fed the streetlight that blinked on the north edge of the dock, the one that hummed every 30 seconds before it cycled. I clipped the timer into the outlet I didn't need to use and taped the fan to a hummed metal panel that would rattle just enough at 01:02 to sound like someone bumped it. Small sounds travel far at the water. People turn their heads for them. Then they miss what happens to their left. The camera above the gate still wore its new housing like a cheap suit. I took a picture of the wire with my own phone and zoomed in. The cut wasn't clean. Whoever did it used impatience instead of a knife. That told me how long they planned to stay. Not long. On my way out, I placed the headlamp under the dock at thigh height where creosote stains masked everything. I set it to red. Red saves your vision and makes men jump when they're used to white. Near the ladder that scraped my palms yesterday, I slid the broken grill fan behind a stack of old pallets and taped it to kick on when the timer clicked. I wasn't building booby traps. I was building hiccups in their attention. By the time the sun fell, the maroon SUV with the cracked Saint sticker had found me again. It didn't try to hide now. It parked across from our street and hummed with 2 men inside who had radios but weren't cops. Their windows held the last light in 2 flat squares. If they wanted me to feel watched, they were late. I decided to take back the part of the plan they thought they owned: family. Harold's Sunday dinner was supposed to keep me soft and smiling. I made it arrive early. I texted him, "Can we talk tonight? Just us. No Marcus. I need your counsel." He answered within 5 minutes, too fast for a man who pretends to be busy. "Of course. 8 p.m. My study." Harold's house smelled like money trying to be modest. Shelves of books no one read, a bowl of keys like an art piece. He hugged me at the door as if cameras were on us. In his study, he poured me bourbon he didn't drink and sat with his hands steepled like a man about to give a blessing. "Amara," he began, soft, pastor warm. "You've always been the strong one. Marcus is delicate in some ways. The city is rough on delicate men. He's trying to do right. He doesn't always know how." "It would help if the men around him did," I said, and watched his eyes, not his mouth. He chose each word like a coin he couldn't spend twice. "There are currents," he said. "You served. You understand. Sometimes we do smaller wrongs to prevent larger ones." "Like what?" I asked. "Like keeping certain projects on track," he said. "Like smoothing relationships so the neighborhoods keep their lights and the docks stay open. Our enemies do not get to win because we're too pure to play." "You mean Darius Cole?" I said. His lashes didn't even twitch. "Names are less important than outcomes," he said. "What about Detective Mercer?" I asked, and that one got him. His eyes cut to the right, 3 degrees and back, a pilot checking an instrument. "Amara," he said gently. "Marcus told me you've had trouble since service. It's nothing to be ashamed of. If you're seeing patterns where there are none, we can—" "I brought you a gift," I said, and laid my phone on his desk with the screen dark. It was recording from the moment I parked out front. I hadn't announced it. I wasn't going to. "It's called honesty," I said. "I never had trouble with it." Something behind his face tightened and vanished. "You're making a mistake," he said, no pastor in it now. "These are serious men, and you are one woman. Don't make yourself a problem they need to solve." "Then you solve it," I said, standing. "Start by getting Marcus out." He smiled without moving his lips, like a portrait painter's trick. "Marcus is not in danger," he said, "unless you put him there." I walked to the door and didn't turn back. He called after me, fatherly again, as if he could erase what had already fallen out of his mouth. "Sunday at 7, dear," he said. "We'll all be together. No more of this." In the hallway, a shadow leaned off the wall and straightened. Crown tattoo. Harold didn't look forced to know him. He looked familiar. Outside, I texted Dana one line. "Harold circling the drain, confirms policy not names." Then I sent the audio file. Her reply came fast. "Received." I pulled into the hospital's staff lot 10 minutes before Lena's shift ended. She walked toward my car with her backpack on both shoulders like a student who did all the homework. 2 men broke from the cigarette crowd and lined up with her steps. Dark suits, average hair, one with a jaw that had lost too many fights and one too many. "Ms. Ortiz," the fighter jaw said. "Quick word?" She acted like she didn't hear. They stepped closer. "Be a shame if a complaint went to the board about your temperament," the other said, a smile that didn't touch heat. "You've been snappy. Patience talk." Lena stopped and turned to them with a nurse's calm that I've seen hold bleeding people together. "My temperament is fine," she said. "Yours is showing." "Your friend Amara is on a downswing," Fighter Jaw said. "We care about her. You should too." "I do," Lena said. "Enough to put your faces on a report if you follow me one more step." She took a picture before they could flinch and walked on. 10 paces later, she exhaled and slid into my passenger seat with shaking hands. "Say the word," she said. "The word is clear after tonight," I said. "You go home. Lock your door. If I don't text clear by 01:30, send the package to every reporter whose number your cousin has, and to Dana again, twice." She nodded and touched my wrist the way people do before you jump in cold water. "Don't be a hero," she said. "I'm not," I said. "I'm a clock." At 0018, I parked 3 blocks from Dock 17 and walked the long way in a gray hoodie and a ball cap, with the brim softened from too many laundromats. The night had its own breath down there. Salt, oil, old crab. The maroon SUV with the Saint sticker was gone. Someone had graduated me from training wheels to the real watch. I tucked myself into the notch I'd chosen earlier, where the corrugated wall bent and threw shadows crooked. At year 058, the north streetlight hummed, dimmed, and blinked exactly on beat. The timer would click at 0102, the fan would rattle its small rattle. I would move when their heads turned. I didn't have to beat them. I had to beat their focus. Footsteps came first, 3 sets, the middle one dragging. The gate creaked. A flashlight skimmed low and lazy like a bored cat. The crown tattoo's voice floated out before the men did. "Easy," he said. "Boss wants him awake." They brought Marcus out between them. His hands were bound in front with a zip tie, cheap hardware store kind, easy to cut, loud to break. His face was swollen at the cheekbone. His ring finger was bare. When he saw me in the dark, he shook his head once, slow. I nodded back, just as slow. Neither of us meant no. A fourth figure ghosted the doorframe. He didn't come out far enough for the light to catch his face. He didn't need to. He did the shoulder check with the same small touch I'd seen on the corner store video. Detectives carry habits like birthmarks. "Phone," he said to Crown Tattoo. Crown held up the burner I'd left where they could find it. "She brings it," he said. He sounded pleased with himself, like a kid who guessed the end of a movie out loud. "Good," the detective said. "Let her." They pulled Marcus to the center of the dock like a table centerpiece. The water licked the pylons below with a patient sound. I felt my heart slow into the tempo it learned overseas. Count, breathe, move on the exhale. At 0102, the fan clicked and rattled behind them, a tiny broken bird sound. Every head turned left. It took less than a second. That was enough. I slid along the corrugated edge, hugged the blind strip of shade, and took the ladder down just 2 rungs, putting water between their eyes and the line of my movement. I came up behind the pallet stack, red light cupped in my palm, and breathed the dock into focus. In the red wash, their pupils opened too wide. The detective lifted his hand toward the glow without meaning to, the way men touch carries they don't understand. "Don't get cute," he said, to the air, to me. "Wasn't planning on it," I answered from somewhere my voice could echo. It skated out across water and back, not where my body was, a throw I'd practiced in buildings with worse acoustics. "Hands," Crown Tattoo barked. "Let me see your hands." He thought he was making rules. He thought I came to take them. He thought tonight would end with me quiet and Sunday clean. They didn't see the timer. They didn't know how quick 30 seconds can be when everything you love is sitting in the middle of a rectangle of light. They didn't know how long 30 seconds can be when it's your last ones with all your pieces moving. Another hum rolled through the streetlight. The red in my palm went dim. The fan behind them clicked off. The night inhaled. All their attention shifted forward for the smallest breath, a body's dumb expectation that the next thing will come from where it just came from. That's when another sound cut the dark. A car door slamming 2 blocks over, then a laugh too bright for 1 a.m., then a radio burst. Not mine. Pure coincidence or a neighbor losing sleep. Either way, heads twitched. The detective's hand went to his shoulder again. Muscle memory. Useless. "Alone," he called, more to himself than to me. "You said alone." I stepped out of my slice of shadow and showed him the empty open of my hands. No gun. No heroics. The only weight I carried was the plan and the promise I'd already made to myself. I would get Marcus out. Not for him. For the line that had to be drawn. You brought the package? The detective asked. Better, I said. I brought time. He frowned, not understanding because men like him never think of time unless it's on a warrant. He nodded to Crown Tattoo. Do it, he said. The zip tie flashed in the light as Crown grabbed it to pull Marcus closer like a handle. Marcus winced and steadied his feet, the way he does when he tries not to fall on ice. I saw it all then in pieces the length of breaths, the placement of their shoes, the slick spot where seawater had kissed the concrete, the twitch in Crown's wrist before he moves, the distance from the detective's voice to the gun on his hip he thought I couldn't see, the angle I'd need to make them look where the fan wasn't, the beat before the next hum. They thought I'd walk straight in, hands up, and let them write the ending. They thought a woman alone is a hallway and not a maze. The streetlight hummed. 30 seconds started over. I stepped. They built their ending around one idea. I'd walk straight in and stay inside their lines. I didn't. I walked where the light failed and let their own habits do the rest. The streetlight hummed, and my clock reset. 30 seconds. I moved. Hands! Crown Tattoo barked again, angling the flashlight toward the sound of my voice. Look at me, Marcus, I said. Not to Crown, not to the detective, but to the man I married. You remember the zip tie break? His eyes found mine in the half-dark. We'd practiced it once, laughing, years ago, because I hated the idea of being stuck. Hands together, knuckles tight, slam down across the hard ridge of the hip. Pop. It works because plastic likes pressure the same way glass hates gravel. On my count, I said softly. 3, 2. The fan I'd taped in the storage row rattled like a loose screw. All their heads flicked left the same inch. Cops, muscle, even Marcus because bodies follow noise. 1. Marcus snapped his hands down. The tie didn't break clean. It gritted and gave. Crown whipped his head back, saw plastic on the ground, and grabbed for Marcus's wrist like it was still a handle. I threw the red glow from my cupped palm high and right. It painted the corrugated wall with a blood smear that made their pupils swell. I stepped the opposite way. Mercer, the shoulder-check detective, drew without drawing. His hand settled and lifted, slow enough to look calm, fast enough to matter. I didn't challenge him with metal. I challenged him with math. Holster, right side, I called out, just loud enough to sound like a report. Retired habit. You don't shoot unless someone says your name on the news. Men like him hate being read. He hesitated one beat. The fan clicked again. The light hummed. Marcus drove his hands down a second time with the anger he'd been saving for lies. Pop. The tie snapped. He staggered free. Down, I said to him, flat, like a range command. Left. Crates. He dropped. He obeyed. Good. He still knew my voice in the dark. Crown lunged where I'd been, slid on the wet slick a wave had left, and skated past me with a curse that told me he'd misjudged the dock and his shoes. I grabbed his forearm as he passed, used his own speed, and let him go where his momentum wanted him anyway, face first to wood. Nothing broke that shouldn't. He coughed, furious, and swung an elbow. I took it on the meat of my forearm and felt the thud without letting it stick. Enough, Mercer snapped, moving his light in a deliberate arc like he could paint me into a corner. You wanted to talk? Talk. Fine, I said, letting the red glow sink behind a crate so it looked like something living in the shadows. Let's save time. We all know why we're here. Your borrowed plates, your ghost city trucks, your envelopes at St. Paul. Northeast Civic Partners that builds more invoices than lights, King's Kid doing drops, Harold saying outcomes matter more than names. I said them for you so you don't have to put them in your mouth. You don't know Darius Cole. Crown spat from the ground, propping himself on a palm, eyes mean and bright. "Not yet," I said, "but he knows me." A fifth figure stepped from the doorway like a quiet decision. He wore leather gloves like it was winter when it wasn't, and he smiled the way men smile when they're used to getting their change counted correctly. I'd seen him only once in bad footage and a set of filings that pretended he didn't exist. The room's temperature changed like a draft had slipped under the door. "Evening, Ms. Hayes," he said, soft as a church whisper. "You've caused paperwork." "Then your day finally matched your budget," I said. Darius King Cole let the compliment slide off the surface of his face. "We like our city working," he said. "Lights on, bids clean, people paid. You complicate that." "You steal," I said. "You dress it up and call it upkeep." "Words are tires," he said. "They go where you point them." He glanced at Marcus the way a man checks the weather before he sails. "You married up," he told me. "But he's soft. Soft men melt. I'm not cruel. I make it quick." "Don't," Marcus said, voice raw. I raised a hand without taking my eyes off Darius. "You're done giving me clocks," I said to him. "Mine's louder." I slid 2 inches right so I could see Mercer's shoes. He had planted them too square, like a range posture, not a street one. I pictured his draw. I pictured his angle. I pictured the slick. 30 seconds sang through the light and reset again. I'd been building my door since dusk. Time to walk through it. "Here's what happens," I said. "You're going to say Harold's name. You're going to say Mercer's. You're going to say how the dock fits the restaurant fits the bids. You're going to say Northeast. You're going to say retainer. And you're going to say keep her calm, because that's what you texted. I don't need a confession. I need a pattern in your voice." Darius almost laughed. "To who?" I touched the brim of my cap where a single piece of tape held down a tiny plastic clicker. Voice memo on my phone, set to auto-send every 60 seconds to 3 different inboxes, including Dana's. I'd started it when I parked at Harold's. I hadn't turned it off. "Someone who doesn't care about your Sunday dinners," I said. His mouth flattened. For the first time, he looked like a man in weather he hadn't planned for. "Shoot her," Crown said through his teeth. "Not yet," Darius said. "Not while she's useful." Mercer adjusted the beam and took one careful step. The light hummed. My thumb found the headlamp switch in my pocket and kissed it. The red flash bloomed again. Pupils opened. I dropped the lamp. Darkness swallowed the next beat whole. I moved in the quiet between their blinks. Not far. 3 steps. Enough to change every angle they'd memorized without telling their feet. I tossed a small bolt I'd picked up from the storage row high and left. It clanged off metal like a ladder falling somewhere else. Mercer's light swung. Crown turned his gun toward the misdirection. Darius didn't move his hands at all. He didn't need to. He expected other men to do it for him. "Marcus," I said, "on me." He slid on hands and knees to the crate stack like he'd never learned to be proud. "Good. Pride kills." I came up behind Crown, took his wrist the way you take a doorknob you plan to own, twisted just enough to make his fingers forget their job, and let the gun go where guns want to go when no one respects them. Away. It skittered across concrete and kissed the edge of a plank. I put Crown's face down and used the zip tie from the ground to teach his wrists to behave. He bucked once. I sat my weight not on his spine, but on the part that makes men decide to stop testing you. He made the right decision. The crown ink on his wrist looked foolish with plastic biting into it. Mercer's draw finished late. He had to choose between shooting into shadow near his boss's knees or finding a cleaner line. He chose clean. He shifted. A cop looking for a shot and a headline that wouldn't bother his chief. When he did, his foot met the slick water had left. He didn't fall hard. He fell enough. The gun barked into the dock. chewing splinters instead of my ribs. I was already moving. I took the gun with my left hand and slid it under the pallet stack with my right. If he went fishing, he'd be wet and slow. His second reach found air. He swore in a way that sounded more like fear than anger. The badge on his belt flashed when he turned. The laminate had a crease through the middle like a lie folded too many times. "You're done," I told him. "All that's left is whether you want cuffs or tape." His eyes flicked to Darius, looking for orders. Darius did not give them. He stared at me as if he were trying to find the seam on a piece of fabric he'd always been able to tear. "Where does this end, Ms. Hayes?" he asked. "Because it isn't here." "It ends with your voice in the places you can't reach," I said. "It ends with the city saying your name out loud in daylight." He smiled a little, like a man watching rain he knows won't hit his house. "You think the city cares?" "No," I said, "but Dana does." The name made Mercer flinch, a small, involuntary betrayal. He knew it. He'd heard it whispered somewhere where nerves live. Darius didn't flinch. He memorized it for later. A car turned 2 blocks away. Headlights swept the corrugated wall with a long white brush. Not the maroon SUV. Not a bus. The sound was government sober. Wide tires. Low idle. Darius cocked his head, listening. "You invited friends," he said. "You told me to come alone," I said. "I did. I also sent my voice where it mattered." He took 1 step toward Marcus, and that was his mistake. He wanted the shield again, the old trick. He didn't get it. I was already between them, hands empty, feet set the way sand taught me. We hung there for a second like a picture that hasn't decided which wall it belongs on. "Last chance," I said to Mercer without looking at him. "Holster or water?" He chose badly. He came up fast, desperate to reclaim authority with the sound of a gun. I met his arm with the heel of my palm, not to be pretty, just to change the angle. The shot cracked the night and went nowhere helpful. His wrist went numb. The gun dropped. I put him down to 1 knee and kept him there with the kind of pressure that asks a question and insists on an answer. He answered by letting go. Behind me, Crown thrashed. The zip tie held. Beside me, Marcus breathed like a runner at the top of a hill. In front of me, Darius weighed distance, time, and pride. "Say his name," I told him, voice low enough to make it private for the recording. "Say Harold." He let the leather gloves flex. "Harold," he said, almost kind. "Isn't your problem. I am." "That was enough," I said. I took 2 steps back and pulled my phone from my pocket without showing its screen. The last memo had already flown, like every memo the last 20 minutes. I thumbed 1 word to Dana. "Move." The headlights reached the mouth of the dock and went black. Doors opened quiet, not like TV. No shouted warnings. No pounding boots. The kind of approach that believes in outcomes more than theater. I didn't know if it was Dana's people or Harold's, and that was the honest truth. Both kinds come in unmarked cars and both prefer silence. Darius saw the dark and misread it as his. "This isn't your kind of war," he said softly. "It became mine when you used my husband like furniture," I said. "It stayed mine when your detective tried to make me a footnote." Somewhere behind us, a radio clicked twice, the way people signal when they can't say what they want to say. Mercer heard it and went smaller, like a suit shrinking on a hot day. Crown turned his face to the concrete and muttered a prayer that didn't sound practiced. The streetlight hummed again and reset the clock I no longer needed. I stood between Darius and Marcus and let the night choose whose footsteps would arrive first. I had 2 packages ready, one already humming in the wires, one sitting under my thumb that would send every file to Lena's list of noisy people if the wrong voice shouted my name. "Look at me," I told Marcus without turning. "Whatever happens, you stay down. If I say run, you go. Don't wait for me to catch up." Why did you come? He asked. The same broken question from 100 kitchen tables where people think apologies fix architecture. To end this, I said. Not for you. For the line. We waited. The dock breathed. Far off, a gull screamed at nothing. The footsteps came closer, measured, not rushed. A woman's voice cut the dark, level and unhurried. Ms. Hayes, it said. Check-in received. Dana. Or someone who wore her tone. I didn't relax. Not yet. I looked at Darius and saw something microscopic move in his eyes. Interest, not fear. He wanted to know the shape of the hand that had finally entered the game. Names, I said, never dropping my eyes from his. You asked where it ends. It ends when I stop asking for them and start sending them. The night had one more breath left in it. Then the dock filled with people who didn't need to shout to be obeyed. I stepped out of their way, kept Marcus behind my leg, and said the only 2 words that still mattered to the room. Record everything. They didn't storm the dock. They flowed into it. Quiet shoes, steady lights, lenses already rolling. The woman's voice that found me in the dark never rose. Hands where I can see them, she said to everyone, not just me. No sudden moves. We're recording. Mercer's badge flashed when he lifted his palms. The crease through the laminate looked deeper under real light. Crown tattoo lay where I'd left him, wrists bit by plastic, eyes hot and wild. Darius King Cole stood like a man posing for a painting he didn't ask for. Mr. Cole, the woman said, stepping into the cone of light. I saw her face now, calm, tired, precise. We're familiar. You can talk here or later, but the tape runs the same. Agent, he answered, almost warm. You must be Dana. She didn't give him the gift of confirmation. She only tipped her chin toward the gate camera, the cut wire, the crates, the slick spot, my headlamp still glowing dull under a pallet. Angles, she said to no one and everyone. You brought bad ones. Mercer tried to regrow a spine. This is a mistake, he said. You're on my holster, Dana said softly. Stow it and breathe. He did. Crown didn't. He jerked against the tie and spat curses that didn't help him breathe easier. 2 plainclothes stepped in and turned his noise into cuffs. Darius watched like a man measuring a doorway with his eyes. When one agent reached for his glove, he drew back with a small smile. Let's not pretend, he said. You don't have a box big enough. Maybe not, Dana said. But we have pattern. Pattern travels. She looked at me. You good, Ms. Hayes? I will be when he's not between me and the exit, I said, and nodded at Marcus. They cut my husband loose. He was shaking, not from pain, but from the weight falling off all at once. Amara, he said, voice small. Are we? We're safe, I said. That's different. Dana's team fanned the dock like they'd rehearsed it in another city with different names. Evidence bags, chain of custody seals. A short handheld wand swept the floor for metal I'd shoved under pallets. It sang once and gave Mercer back his gun inside a plastic coffin with a number on it. No speeches, no victory laps, just work. Darius took 1 step toward the dark water to look away from the lights. 2 agents shifted with him, not touching, just drawing a line he could feel under his shoes. He flicked his eyes from them to Dana to me, and finally to Marcus, who couldn't lift his head. Wrong kind of hero, Darius told Marcus, almost kind. You should have stayed soft. Marcus didn't answer. He didn't have an answer left that mattered. Mr. Cole, Dana said, you know your rights. You also know your habits. Harbor Key Services, Northeast Civic Partners, retainers, ghost fleet plates, cash in kitchen alleys, detectives who touch their shoulder when no one has asked them a question. You can save us some time or watch this loop in court. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Time is cheap, he said. Not tonight, she replied. They led him away without drama. Mercer tried to speak. Union, council, you'll hear about, and then swallowed the rest, because the tape doesn't care about bravado. Crown left a smear of blood and pride on the concrete and tried to kick it back over itself, like that would erase the line. I didn't follow them through the gate. I stood there listening until the dock sounded like itself again. Water on wood, a gull angry at nothing, the headlamp's battery dying to a faint pulse. When the lights on the unmarked cars finally winked out at the far end of the road, Dana came back alone. You sent every 60 seconds, she said. Smart. I didn't want to argue with a bad edit, I said. You're done for tonight, she told me. Go home, sleep if you can, expect noise in the morning. What kind? I asked. The kind that changes phone numbers and titles, she said. Not endings, not yet. The city woke up polite. The first headlines said audit and review. By noon they said investigation. By evening they said indictments pending. The press didn't learn Darius's name first. They learned Mercer's. Easier to print a badge than a network. Harold went on TV with his best father voice and said phrases that taste good and feed no one. Misunderstanding. We welcome transparency. Let the process play out. Donors looked at their calendars and forgot his number by morning. He stepped down from a committee to avoid distraction. Subpoenas don't care what you meant to do. Marcus met with people who introduced themselves as counsel and special, then left with a paper that said cooperation and deferred. He signed. I watched the pen in his hand shake where the ring wasn't. That night he stood in our kitchen and tried to build a bridge with words that won't hold a person's weight. I never meant to hurt you, he said. I thought I could keep it separate. You can't separate a flood, I said. You just stand higher or you drown. I can fix it, he whispered. Fix you, I said. I already fixed the rest. We didn't fight. There was nothing left to win. In the morning I packed a duffel with what fits. A few shirts, the old photo of me on a block wall overseas with dust in my grin, the dog-eared paperback I read on flights home when I needed to remember there were still pages left. I left the house key on the counter. The white fence didn't look like safety anymore. It looked like paint on wood. On the way out, I texted Lena. Clear. She sent back a string of exclamation points and a heart. Then, because she is who she is, breakfast when you want. I met Dana 2 days later at a diner that insists on keeping the coffee hot no matter what the news says. No badges, no files on the table. Just two people who don't like wasted time. You could have worn a badge, she said, reading something in my face I hadn't said out loud. I had uniforms, I said. They didn't change who I was. I don't need another. She nodded. There's work, she said, like she was talking about weather. It doesn't pay in applause. I'm not shopping for applause, I said. We sat quiet long enough to hear the kitchen bell twice. She slid a napkin across the table with 3 initials and 2 cities written small. You sure? She asked. No one's ever sure, I said. But I'm ready. She folded the napkin back to me and stood. At the door she paused. You could have walked away, she said. Most do. I tried, I said. I don't fit in photographs of quiet lives. Then pick your fights, she said. Don't let them pick you. When she left, I sat with my hands around the coffee cup until the heat bled out. I thought about the man I married, about the father he tried to impress, about the network that taught him how to be useful without ever making him strong. I didn't hate any of them. Hate is noisy. I needed quiet for what came next. That night, I rented a place with no fence and a door that sticks unless you lift it when you lock it. I taped a new sticky note inside the sink cabinet. It only had 2 words on it this time. Stay human. Because that's the part no one tells you. War doesn't end when you take off a uniform. It waits. It creeps under white paint. It smiles for cameras. Some days the fight is outside. Some days it's not letting the dark inside you set the rules. Some days it's getting up, making coffee, and refusing to be the soft thing they expect. My phone buzzed once, late. An unknown number. No threat. No clock. Just a line. When you're ready. I typed back the only answer that still fits the shape of my life. Send names. If this story hit you, if it made you ask what you'd do or who you'd be when the quiet lies start talking, stick around, subscribe to the channel, hit like, and tell me in the comments what you'd carry forward and what you'd leave behind. Life throws hard things at all of us. We don't get to choose that. We do get to choose to face them with steadiness and courage, one step at a time.